Hello and welcome back to the Go-Karts and Good Times YouTube channel. Today I'm going to try and get my 1990 Mazda Miata as stripped apart as possible. For those of you who are new to the channel or unfamiliar with this project, a couple months back I picked up a 1990 Miata as a project and I've been slowly making progress on it, getting it stripped out. In the last video I removed the interior and the top and a couple other little things, but you can see it's still sitting here along with the carpet that has to be stored before I can move on to tearing apart the car. My main goal today is to get things like the heat and AC systems, the trunk, and any airbag wiring or components removed so I can get the car down to just what it needs to run and drive. As you'll see later in the video, I can remove things like license plate lights or hood latches because I won't be needing them later, but I'll leave most of the wiring for the lights and such intact because I will need to utilize it later down the road if I want lights to work on the car. Like I did mention earlier, someone installed a security system, so I'll also be trying to find out what wiring goes with that and if I can remove it. So without further ado, I'm going to start up front with the wiring in the engine bay and any extra components I don't need up here. I do want to note before I start the time lapse that some of the wiring for the airbags is in with the rest of the main loom. So the best I can do is unclip it at these various airbag clips around the car for the front fender sensors and the fuse box, which sits up front on the radiator support, and then they can be pulled out through the fender and removed. I think some of the same exists up front here, but I may have to do a little bit of untaping and retaping to pull out as much as I want. This here is probably unboltable and can be unplugged and also pulled out. Now, with that explained and the spare parts put up in the rafters, I can actually start the time lapse and get working on this removal. Before I move on to taking the other components out of the engine bay, like the AC, wipers, and heat, I do want to take a look at the wiring inside. It looks like most of this rat's nest that I pulled out of the rest of the car is for the security system. You can see an auxiliary fuse and random tap-ins in the factory wiring, but I don't want to just go chopping this away until I know exactly what I need to keep. So I'll put this on hold for now and I'll revisit it later. The security system will be destroyed as I pull it out, and it's not worth anything anyway, but the airbag components I will be gentle with and save, not trying to break them. I won't be reusing them, but someone may want them at some point in the future, and sometimes it's just better to do it the right way than go ripping stuff out haphazardly. Like I said, now it's time to significantly declutter this engine bay by removing everything that I don't need for it to run and drive. So far I've gotten a decent amount off, some that I am saving and some that I'm not, and now I'm just stuck on these AC line fittings which I'm trying to get off without just cutting the lines. Then I can attempt to get the compressor removed, freeing up even more room on this side of the engine. I've been doing some work off camera, and well, one of the lines did snap off of the canister for the AC condenser. For the most part, I think I'm going to be able to get it out without having to cut any lines. Again, another line successfully removed without having to cut the rubber portion. The next challenge will be getting it unbolted from the actual compressor pump. After far too much struggle, the AC condenser pump is finally removed. Again, I doubt anyone will want it, but this is now the second Miata AC system I have and I don't need. After a little bit of work off camera, I was poking around the wiring loom up under the dash by the steering wheel here where the security system was, And I got this rat's nest removed, and hopefully this is all security system components and none of it is wiring that I actually needed. Just to be safe, I'm going to do a little test and try and start the car. And I guess that question is answered once again. With the engine bay as far torn down as I'm comfortable doing right now, I'd like to move on to getting the heat, AC, and anything else underneath the dash taken out. Again, I'm not sure if anyone will want this, but I'll try and be nice when taking it out and set it aside if I ever need it in the future. A lot easier than expected. All of the climate control components from underneath the dash are now removed. I also got one more airbag component removed, and unfortunately this wire also snakes in with the main loom underneath the tape. I'm not that worried about this sticking around because it will annoy me, but it's not a significant weight adding, and it's not actually going to impede the function or use of the car. Next, the biggest piece remaining is actually the trunk and the rear bumper. Like mentioned earlier, I can move everything that doesn't impede the function of the car from running and driving. So I can get these torn off, and then for the most part, I'm done. With both the trunk and the rear bumper removed, I'm that much closer to getting the teardown process done, but that's all I can do for now, and I'll be back later to finish up. I finally returned to get this process of getting the car as torn down as possible done. As you'll see from last time, the hinges for the trunk are still on and need to be removed, and this car has a cut exhaust, so I'm going to try and get the rear half removed with the muffler. While I'm at it, I'm also going to look for little things that I can get removed, like the bushings on the doors or the fuel door, as well as getting the thing cleaned out for the next steps. Without further ado, I'm going to get the heater cranking and start working on the car. Getting those hinges out was supposed to be quick and easy, but I missed a couple screws on the inside of the car up under this trim piece. I also noticed that there's a bunch of tabs on this trim piece which are holding it down. So with all of those removed, I can now slowly and carefully peel it off of the area surrounding where the top used to go. My methods for getting it off may not have been orthodox, but at least I got it off without breaking anything. With slow, constant pressure working my way around, I can help release the glue that's holding this trim piece on and sealing it to the body of the car. Again, this isn't something I'll need, but I might as well keep it in as best shape as possible because there's no need to use brute force when I can just take my time and get everything off nicely. Next, I can move on to trying to get this factory muffler removed and the cut section of exhaust that still hangs under the car. It should only be held on by a couple of hangers. It should be fairly easy to pull that out. With the trunk seal and rear exhaust portion removed, I can start looking for even smaller parts like these plastics that I can take off the car. I'll start with the fuel door, leaving on the cap, of course, to keep out contaminants, and the fuel door's accompanying release lever, which sits inside the car and has a cable that snakes into the trunk so that it can be popped open. What you basically just saw is me going down the side of the car looking for any plastics or rubber that I can remove and won't be needing later on down the road. Sure, it may not have been the most illuminating thing in the world, but this just goes to show that there are tons of little bits and pieces around the car that need to be taken off to be fully stripped down to nothing. With all the various trim and plastic pieces removed from both sides of the car, I can now say that I'm completely done with getting it stripped down. Sure, there's still a couple really tiny things I could take off, but that should all come with what I'm going to be doing in the next video. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. You get the gist of the process, and you know now that I'm at the end of it. While the radiator and an intake will have to go back in this spot, it's a lot less cluttered than before. Even removing little things like the windshield wiper fluid reservoir or getting the AC stuff removed, there's a lot more room in this engine bay for activities. I suspect that as I go to clean it up and simplify it even further, it will continue to look better and better. This is just the first stage. My hair looks crazy, but this is about where the contents of this video are going to end. I have it all stripped out, and I'm ready to move on with the next step of the build. Of course, between videos, I'll have to clean up this massive mess of parts on this side of the garage and decide what I'm keeping and not keeping, but that'll appear in the next video and happen in due time. These videos may be a little bit short, but I think that's for the better. While it doesn't look like a ton of difference is made between this and the last video, just look at the pile of parts that are taking up half of my garage sitting on the floor. Remember, these came out of the car just a couple days ago. This has drawn on long enough, so if you enjoyed, I'd appreciate it if you liked, commented, or even subscribed to the channel. And again, I want to say thank you for watching, and if you live in the Northeast, hopefully you're enjoying this weather. As for now, this is me signing off.